What's up, guys? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Fit Women's Weekly podcast. I am very, very excited for this episode. I'm going to keep the intro very short so that we can jump right into it. But basically, let me just preface it by saying this. This is a very different episode than what I normally do. I'm normally sharing things about the fitness world, obviously the health space, nutrition, and in this episode, I'm introducing you guys to Becky Webster. Becky and her husband own a very large piece of land in the Oneida Nation. I think I'm saying that correctly, but I apologize if I'm not. And so what we're talking about is keeping your heritage alive and talking about your ancestry and ancient practices that we can still utilize today and the respect that we have for our own cultures. And I just think that her story and what she's doing is so cool that when I learned about Becky, I was like, you know what? I would really love to learn more about her and share her story with you guys. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. So please listen in, even though this is a little bit different than what we normally do here on the show. And before we do jump in, let me just say one thing, that this episode is sponsored by Fit Women's Weekly and the Summer Shred. The Summer Shred is my 8-week strength program that kicks off on June 3rd. Registration is open, and it's only open to you guys that listen to me on the podcast and people that follow me over on social media. So it's a very, very close group of women to keep it nice and small and intimate and to make sure that you get the training that you deserve. It is 8 weeks of structured strength training, 8 weeks of tracking. I create a tracking sheet just for the people that do this challenge so that you can mark off, did you do each day as it's laid out. Every day, you just have to open it up. I lay out exactly what you need to do, from the workout to small little challenges that you can do throughout the day to increase your overall movement and to make healthier choices with your fitness and with your nutrition to help hold you accountable. The Summer Shred and every challenge that I ever do is not meant to ever be something that you just sign up for. I want it to be something that you sign up and you complete all 8 weeks, and I'm making sure that I give you the tools to get it done. So if you have any questions, I will put all the information down in the show notes so that you can hold your spot. It is only $247 for the entire 8-week program. And like I said, it starts off on June 3rd. But when you sign up, you can go ahead and get instant access to Fit Women's Weekly Live so that you can get in there. And if at any time between the time you sign up and June 3rd, you kind of feel like, maybe this just isn't for me, no big deal. You can get your money back and say that you tried, right? But I know that you will love it. So join me on the Summer Shred. It's going to include everything that you need to make this not a hot girl summer, but a strong girl summer. All right, let's jump into this episode with Becky. It is so nice to meet you, Becky. I'm Kendall.
Nice to meet you.
This is obviously different. Like, I'm normally a fitness and nutrition podcast, but I also like to just get outside and introduce people to other different lifestyles and educate. And when I learned about you and your property, I was like, what a really, really cool and fascinating place that I know nothing about. So I will be completely honest. I have not done a ton of research because I want to learn from you. I don't want to come in being like, oh, I know this, this, and this. I want to be an open book, just like all of my listeners. So I'm really excited to chat.
Yeah.
I will go ahead and say, like, we're already recording because I like to keep these so conversationally based, like I mentioned. I did try to go back and do a little bit of research, and I'm actually really embarrassed to share this story. So I know, obviously, that you're part of the Oneida tribe, right? And I want to learn more about, did I say that correctly?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
No, please correct me. How do you say it correctly?
Oneida.
Oneida. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And so when I was doing my research on it, all I could find was information on the Oneida group in New York from the 1800s, which is very, very different. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay, very different, obviously. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I getting myself into? I don't know what's going on. And I was like, this just does not add up, does not make sense. So I started to do more and more research. And I was like, oh, so they must have copied the name from the original. No. Okay. Then let's just start all over. All right, Becky, fill me in on the Oneida group, your story, your family history. And then, yeah, if you don't mind sharing, because I'm sure I'm not the only person confused by the names.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's okay. A lot of people get confused. So when they ask, what tribe are you from? I say, I'm Oneida. And they say, oh, New York Oneidas. Well, no. The The Oneida people were part of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. So there's the six tribes. It's the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and Tuscarora. So all of them except the Tuscarora, we joined up as a confederacy before European contact. So we all lived in predominantly what's now New York State. And the Tuscarora joined in the 1700s into the Confederacy. But in the early 1800s, the Oneida people were removed to what is now Wisconsin. And some people stayed behind, and some
They were
people,
moved from, like, American government moved them?
yes,
Or, okay.
yep, to Wisconsin, and some people stayed, and then some people also went back. And there's also Oneida of the Thames in Canada that's along that same route along the Great Lakes, that they stopped there, and some people, moved back there. So all three Oneida communities are still the same people. We just operate under different governments today.
Gotcha. And then, so what is the Oneida group from the 1880s that were more of the perfectionists? Do you know anything about where they got their name from?
They're not even Native American people.
At all. Okay. Yeah, I didn't think so. Just wanted to clarify,
Yeah.
clarify that 100%. And so then were you raised on the reservation
Yes.
your whole life? Very, very cool. And just out of curiosity, what I know with y'all's, well, first off, explain to me your property and please tell me how to pronounce it, because there's no way I would be able to give it the respect and the justice it deserves.
Yeah, sure. So we have a 10-acre farmstead on the Oneida Reservation here in Wisconsin. And I don't know where you wanted me to start with it, or how you want me to describe it, but I can share the name. And that name was given to us by an Oneida faith keeper who, after hearing our story about what we wanted to do with this property, he came up with the name Unkwakwa Jeet Nuni Unkwayaya Toslu. It means our foods, where we plant things.
That is beautiful. And I definitely absolutely want to get more into that and talk about indigenous seeds and ancestral growth. Like, I know that is so important to you guys, but I'd also love to hear more about reservation life, because I feel like that's something so different compared to what a lot of us are used to. I know that you talk a lot about, like, the sovereignty of the area that you live in. So when you live on a reservation and you're raised on a reservation, how is that similar, and how is that different than being in, just like, I'm in Charleston, South Carolina right now. Do you guys have different laws that you get to go by, or is it the same?
Yeah, we definitely have a different set of laws. Oftentimes they meet or exceed state and local standards. There's confusion oftentimes about overlapping jurisdiction, because not everybody who lives on the reservation is a tribal member, and the tribe or tribal members don't own all of the land on the reservation. So it can get pretty confusing sometimes. A little bit of a funny story. So I'm also a recovering attorney. I used to be an attorney for my nation for 13 years. And working for the Oneida Nation, I worked on a lot of intergovernmental agreements. And one of them was with the neighboring city of Green Bay. Are you familiar with Green Bay? Green Bay
I know Green Bay
Yeah.
Packers.
Lots of people know Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
So we were the city and the reservation overlap a little bit.
Okay.
So mind you, the Oneida people were here in Wisconsin before Wisconsin was a state. So just keep that frame of reference in mind. So we were negotiating an agreement with the mayor of the city of Green Bay, and we showed him a map on where our territories overlap. And he looked at it and said, "Tell me, how is it that the reservation came to be within the city?" Well, sir.
Actually, your city decided to come onto our land.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, but we, for the most part, with one notable exception, we have really good working relationships with all the governments around us, knowing that we have different laws. We have sovereignty. We have the ability to make our own laws and follow them. So it's, for the most part, not a problem here. Like, for example, on our farmstead, my husband and I were both enrolled Oneida tribal members. But we own our own land. So it's not the tribe's land, but we're on the reservation. And we have a certified commercial kitchen. And it's the Oneida Nation that comes and inspects and certifies the kitchen. It's not the town or local government that does that.
And are you considered American citizens?
Yes.
Okay. Because I know, like, there is also the stereotypes of sovereign citizens, right, that aren't necessarily part of a reservation or a tribe that then try to say they're not American citizens. So I do like to clarify for listeners.
Yeah, there's a whole, I mean, there's over 500 Native American tribes in the United States. And even within those tribes, you're going to have people with differing opinions on how things ought to be. So um, don't take what I'm saying to be the 100% truth because you ask somebody else and they'll have a different perspective.
Right, for sure. Over just even in your lifetime, do you feel like tribal life is slowly decreasing, or do you feel like now when the life that we're living, we're able to bring more respect and more light to it for it to be able, because it's such an important thing. Like, right, you guys, I shouldn't probably say Indians, American natives were around long before I was like ever here, right? And my ancestors. So it's so
Mhm.
important to keep that ancestor that alive. Do you feel like it's able to do that, or even in your lifetime, do you feel like it's decreased over time?
No, I think it's actually increasing over time. And I
Uh-huh.
think so the Native American people, Indigenous, Indians, I don't really have a strong preference about what to go by. But again,
Okay.
somebody else they will. But we've had a pretty traumatic history. We've been
Yeah.
removed. We've been government has tried to forcibly assimilate us into mainstream society. The boarding school era where they took our children and punished them for speaking their language, force them to eat different foods, wear different clothes, and go to church. All of that stuff was meant to erase Native American people.
Mhm.
So, my in my lifetime, we still have people in our community who are survivors of that boarding school era. So,
Oh, wow. So
so
it
they
doesn't really go back that long ago.
no, it's not ancient history. It's my father-in-law went to boarding school, so it's it's a little bit different when he was going there versus like when my grandparents' generation went.
Mhm.
Um, but there was a lot of shame that and self, I don't know. They didn't want to speak their language. A lot of times they forgot their language. They were kind of brainwashed into this idea that Christianity is the way to go. You need to pretend that you're not Native American. All of that stuff was going on in our communities and throughout the country. So I think it wasn't up until maybe around the 70s with the civil rights movement, with AIM, with all of this other stuff, that there became this resurgence to say, no, we need to reclaim who we are. We should not be shamed or embarrassed of who we are as a people. We're survivors. So my husband and I, we both grew up here on the reservation, but there wasn't a lot of access to our traditional knowledge.
That's what I was
Um,
going to ask. Was a lot of the culture
yeah.
preserved, or has a lot of it been lost over
Yeah,
time?
there's a lot that has been preserved, but a
Mhm.
lot of it is preserved because there were certain families that held on to it when the rest of our families let it go or
Mhm.
put it down. So for example, my we have two daughters and they're now 18 and 19, but while they were growing up here, they sang our cultural songs. They were learning our language. They went to
Mhm.
our ceremonies. So all of these things that we didn't really have access to until we were adults. So I think it's we just even here on our farmstead, we have a long stretch of our property is right along a road. And we do our traditional gardening style right out there, and cars will drive by and they'll slow down. And sometimes they'll stop their car, roll down the window. Sometimes they'll even get out of their car. What are you guys doing out here?
Oh, wow.
And we'll explain,
Yeah.
this is how we traditionally grew our crops. And, we're happy to have visitors here. So we're doing that out loud. And I asked my mom one day what she would have thought if our grandma was seeing all of this. And she said at first she'd be terrified because that's what she was brainwashed to be
Mhm.
afraid of our ways. And then she said, but then she would be proud to know that we are picking these ways up, that we're growing our seeds, that we're sharing that, and we're making it accessible for anybody who wants to have that information.
I think that's amazing. And I think it's also, I don't know if it's a generational thing. Maybe it's just me and the people that I'm around, right? Who I surround myself with. But I would like to think that we're no longer in a time where people would see you guys acting with your culture and go, what are they doing? They need to be more like white people, right? And I don't know, for us, for me personally, it's, oh my God, this is so amazing that they're able to continue their culture and keep that a part of our history.
Yeah, I think people aren't don't have concerns with our culture. What a lot of times people have concerns with is the rights that we have that might
Hmm.
be different than other people, the rights that we've reserved in our treaties when
Hmm.
we entered into treaties with the United States. So, like for example, the one exception I talked about with our local government here, we were trying to come to terms on an agreement to, establish and memorialize our understanding of each other's jurisdiction. So
Hmm.
we wrote a letter and said, this is, you have the right to exist, you have the right to govern, and so do we. And they sent us back a letter that said, yes, we respect your right to have your culture and your songs and your dances, but unless you agree to all of these things, which basically means we don't exist, then we don't want to talk to you.
Does it
So
all come back generally financial reasons like taxes and stuff, or?
no, they say it does, but the actual numbers don't support that. Like they've spent and sacrificed, I think, what about $500,000 a year to save $36,000. So that's what the taxes would be. So
Mhm.
it's not about money. It's
Mhm.
about power and control and again trying to erase us and make us go away.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry that you've ever had to face that, but I am very proud of you guys. And I think that's just such an incredible thing that you are able to do and continue with. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about the land that you have and what does it mean to grow in a traditional way? Like, why is it that people stop on the side of the road to watch what you do? How is it any different than if I was in my backyard with, a hoe and a rake planting some seeds?
Yeah, so that part of it looks pretty similar. We also grow in the mounds. So they're about 3 feet by 3 feet and maybe a couple feet tall. And then we plant our corn, beans, and our squash together in those mounds. And we call those our three sisters. And that's one of the ways. So it looks very different when you're walking by. Like you see this corn, but you see there's things growing in the corn and you see squash all around the ground. So that's, I think, one of the things that draws people in to learn about why we grow that way. And, modern or conventional gardeners will now say, oh, look, this is companion planting. Look what we're going to tell you about. Like, oh, nice idea.
And
Things
so
we've
what is the benefit of growing it that way?
Oh, there's lots of benefits. There's soil health benefits. There's actually some studies out there that compared the soil health and growing in Three Sisters versus the soil health and just growing conventionally gardening. Even if you're doing organic practices and all that, but it's really symbolic of the roles that we play as community members. So the corn grows tall and strong and serves as a sturdy pole for the beans to crawl up the corn, and then the
Oh,
beans
very cool.
provide
Okay.
yeah, the beans provide nitrogen to the soil, and then the squash covers the ground with her big broad leaves, and the leaves then will shade out the sun at the base to keep the moisture in and also to keep some of the weeds down. And also, squash has really prickly leaves and stems,
Mhm.
and oftentimes animals don't want to walk through that, so it provides like this natural fence around your garden area.
Wow, that's really cool. So the plants act as a symbiotic like unit, which a lot of times we're always thinking of it almost as if it's like a plague from one plant to the next. Like you have to keep things separated, otherwise one
Yeah.
thing's going to take over another, where actually they can grow in peace and actually grow better together.
Yes.
That is very, very cool. And what are some of the most like indigenous plants that you guys focus on growing in your area?
Yeah, we predominantly focus on corn, beans, and squash, but we also do sunchokes, which conventionally is called Jerusalem artichokes,
Mhm. But
which they're
sunchokes are
not,
so good for you.
yes, they
It
are,
is
but
one
it's
of the most underrated vegetable, I
they
think,
are.
like in continental America. Nobody ever talks about it.
Yes, but it's frustrating though, and this is the example of erasure because they're not from Jerusalem and they're not artichokes. So it's just really bizarre why we name things the way we name them.
Is it
Um,
a root of some sort?
Yeah, it's a tuber. So
Mhm.
they kind of look a little bit like ginger.
Mhm.
So that's the closest thing I can compare to what they look like. But they're related to sunflowers. And yeah, you harvest the roots and they're very prolific. So once you have a patch, like you're gonna have a patch there forever. Even if you try to dig them up, they'll keep coming back. So just be mindful of that. And we put them in a place where we're very happy that they want to come back every year.
Mhm. And then
Um,
as far as like squashes are concerned, I saw on your site that you guys do a lot of like Hubbard squash.
Yep, yeah, we have some giant Oneida Hubbard squash that are just they're so big, we have to use a Sawzall to cut them up.
That's what I had never had. We don't have them here in the South very much. But anytime I go up to my in-laws, they live in Philly, and at Thanksgiving, it's their tradition to have a Hubbard squash. And my mother-in-law looked at me for my first Thanksgiving, and I was like, well, since this is your first one with us, you get the privilege of cracking the Hubbard. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she hands me this, you know, squash that's bigger than my head, and it goes, you have to take it outside, you drop it, and then we collect all the pieces and cook it. And I was like, that's
Yeah.
crazy. And it's delicious.
Yes. Yes, they're very delicious.
It is one of my favorites. And in terms of like food storage, how do you guys store your food that's maybe a little bit non-conventional than what we're used to, that could actually help some people? Because I feel like canning, especially with the older millennials my age, I've really gotten into, I tease my husband, I don't have children, but I'm keeping alive. I've got about a dozen plants in my house. I have a SCOBY in my pantry that I'm keeping alive. I have a starter in my fridge for my sourdough, and I've gotten into canning as well over the years. So what are some really good ways that you guys store your food?
Yeah, so our corn and our beans are dry. So we let the corn dry in the field and then we'll, braid that corn and then hang it up. You can see, I know the people watching or listening might not be able to see, but so we have braids of corn here all over our house. And then the beans, we leave them dry on the vine and then we harvest them when they're dry. So those store just great. The squash, we do a lot of dehydrating.
Mhm.
So on our YouTube channel, we even have a video that talks about how to braid squash. So you cut the squash up into smaller strips, dry them out, and then you braid the squash. So that makes it really easy to store and takes up a whole lot less space than those giant Hubbards
Mhm.
and last a long time.
Like you're braiding like pieces of Hubbard squash.
Yeah,
Do you dehydrate it first to make like a fruit roll up kind of?
kind of, but you don't want it too stiff
Uh-huh.
because then it'll be brittle and it'll break. But you also don't want it to be not dry enough because then it will mold. So you got to really practice with it to get that right consistency in the squash. I like to think of it as you're going for a texture that's like licorice.
Okay. And then the other thing that stood out to me when you were just talking is you said that you let the corn dry on the stalk
Yeah.
first and then you bring it in?
Yes, yeah. So otherwise, if you pick it earlier than that, you can, and we call that green corn. Green not
Mhm.
as in the color, but green as in not ripe. And that tastes a whole lot like our conventional sweet corn. Though we do have sweet corn varieties, most of the corn that we grow is a flint or a flour variety.
Are the indigenous seeds and the fruits that you guys and the vegetables that you guys grow, are they passed down? I mean, how do you guys even keep up with them to make sure that they're not Monsanto? And I would love to hear your thoughts on
Oh my gosh.
Monsanto or commercial.
I really don't have any nice thoughts to share on that.
That's okay. You give me your thoughts.
Well, so like just for example, and seed companies are just as bad sometimes. Like we have a squash variety that we've historically cared for. It's often attributed to our Seneca relatives, but it's called a Buffalo Creek squash, and it's this big, beautiful orange squash. It's quite a bit softer than a Hubbard, but back in I think it was the 1800s or so, maybe the early 1900s, some seed companies came around, grabbed some of our squash, slapped a new name, Boston Marrow, and then started to sell it. So it's like not only have you taken our seed, but you're putting you've erased our history again
Right.
on our generations of caring for this squash. So as far as making sure that the seeds that we have are preserved, we have two high tunnels, and that's kind of like a greenhouse, but we plant directly in the ground. And we can plant a month earlier so we can make sure that when we put our corn in there, that it's not tasseling and silking at the same time that the sneaky neighbor GMO corn is going to. So when the pollen is carried in the wind over to our corn, that it's protected. But we also need to grow larger amounts outside. So we try to time it and make sure that we have a lot of tree lines in between to try to filter out some of that. But we also carefully inspect our corn when we pick it to make sure that if there's any signs at all of cross pollination, we will keep that for seed, or depending on the extent of the cross, we'll give it to the animals. or we can still use it. But we will never use that for seed to plant. So we just make sure that the seed we continue to plant is still good. The beans aren't so bad because they are self-pollinating, even though bears, oh my goodness, bees might come along and puncture the flowers and accidentally, you can have some accidental crosses in there. But again, we just open the seed pods and make sure that they are what they're supposed to look like, and then only save those ones. The squash, we kind of tease the squash a little bit because she's the most promiscuous of the three sisters. So she can cross very easily. So we just have to be extra careful and know who our neighbors are. And then while we're growing here, there's 4 squash families, and you can only really plant one variety from each family, unless you're going to be doing some, covering the flowers and doing hand pollinating, which is something that we don't do. So we'll only grow up to one squash from each family at a time. So
I mean, I know I asked the question, but I guess I just didn't realize how easy it is for cross contamination to happen from one property to the next, and how hard and how much of a science it is to make sure that your seeds stay pure.
yeah. Yeah. And you did ask a question. I didn't want to miss that one because I do get it quite a bit, and that's where we get our seeds from. So I'd say like 99% of the seeds that we grow here are passed down from our family members or our seed mentors who are living in different parts of the country, and caring for the seeds that our people have historically cared for, or they're seeds that are being rematriated to us. And rematriated is kind of like a feminine version of the word repatriated. Rematriated means that they are coming home to us. So like Seed Savers Exchange would hold on to some of our seeds, and we're in the process of having those seeds brought home to our community. So they're being rematriated. Every now and then there's a seed variety that's out there that I can't get a hold of, but I really want to grow. So I will go to some seed companies occasionally. But again, to be very mindful about which seed company you're using, because some of them don't have the most ethical practices when it comes to indigenous seeds.
Mm-hmm. And what does that mean?
That means that they've taken our seeds and renamed them and erased us.
Yeah, exactly. Just out of curiosity, I know there's reservations all over the country. Do different is tribe the correct word, or?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Do different tribes communicate with one another?
Yes, definitely. We have a pretty good network, depending on what area you're in. If you're an attorney, you've got all kinds of networks. If you seed keeper, you have networks there. So we definitely try to keep in contact, especially like looking at best practices, making sure that if we have concerns, we can rely on each other and find solutions in our community members from other communities. So I think it's definitely safe to say that we do talk to each other to try to help each other out.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, I'm in South Carolina, and I know about 3.5 to 4 hours away, I'm near a Cherokee reservation. And unfortunately, I need to be better educated and put myself more, because all I know about it is the fact that you can go gamble.
Yeah, there's some tribes that do have gaming. There's lots of others that don't.
Mm-hmm. And I would love to know a little bit more about your story, Becky, of you said you were an attorney. What happened, or what changed to say, I'm going to put that away and do and educate and live on the land?
Yeah, so we came home after law school, and I was an attorney for my tribe for a number of years, and then I realized I wanted to switch careers. So I went back to school while still being an attorney to earn my PhD so I could be a professor. And then along the way, we also, in 2015 was the first year that we actually planted our indigenous corn. So we're still relatively new.
Mm-hmm.
We had a really scraggly little Charlie Brown braid of corn that year, but we were so proud of it and we were so excited. The next year, we decided to expand our garden, and we did a lot better. That year, we also formed a co-op called Ohelagu, which means among the corn stalks, where we grow acres of corn together as a community. We started off with 2. Sometimes we grow up to 7 acres of corn. We machine plant, but hand pick. So that's just a mammoth amount of corn. And every year we got more into our seeds. And then in 2017, when I secured a tenure track position at the University of Minnesota Duluth, where I know that's 5 hours from my home, but I teach in online classes. So I teach in the undergraduate and graduate tribal administration and governance program. So as soon as I got my tenure track position, I talked to my husband. I said, "Hey, Steve, what do you think about this plan to sell our house, look for some vacant land, build a new house, grow our food, and you quit your job and homeschool the kids?" And he agreed. So we decided to put it out on social media that we're looking for some land. Then a couple hours, we had a friend of mine say, "My cousin's got some land. It's not for sale, but do you want me to see if he'll sell it to you?" I
Everything
said,
has a price tag, right?
"Yes." And within, shortly after that, we had a secured offer to purchase. We bought the land, we built our house. And yeah, we've just been doing different projects here on our farm ever since. In 2021, because a lot of this was getting really expensive, especially on a teacher's salary, we were able to successfully form a 501(c)(3) nonprofit, which allows us to have access to grant funding and tax deductible donations. So we've been doing a lot of things. Like we just finished a wheelchair accessible blacktop path through our main garden area and over to the events area. And we have it just in time because we're having a group of students from one of the universities in Wisconsin coming here, and the organizer called and really panicked and said, "Oh my gosh, one of our students just broke their hip, and they're going to be in a wheelchair. Will they still be access? Will they still be able to access this place?" I said, "Actually, yes."
Actually, yes. Wow.
Yes. So it was, "Oh, I'm so sorry that happened, but I'm so grateful that we're prepared to still be able to have that student have the experience." So we do things like that we wouldn't have ever been able to do on our own here, but with the help of grants and community that we're able to pull that all off.
I'm just curious, how much property does the complete reservation hold?
There's 65,400 acres.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because in
it's
my head, again, naive woman here, when you're like, oh, we put out to see if there's any land available. And in my head, I'm going like, oh, isn't it just like 20 family? Like I have no
oh
idea in my
yeah.
head. And you're like, no, 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 no.
Yes, it's roughly like a rectangle tipped on its side a bit, but it's about 12 miles by 10 miles.
Okay. And how many residents are there?
So I'm not sure about who all lives here, but the population of our tribal members is 17,000. So we have
Oh,
17,000 tribal members, but
mhm.
they don't all live here.
Okay. And then what's your goal with the property? With all of the corn that you guys sell it locally, and obviously education is a huge part of you guys too. So financially with the 501(c) and just personally, what are your goals?
So we don't sell anything. We actually even have a trading post here where we offer our corn, our beans, and all kinds of other things. We have it on a barter system. So we wanted to not have our community think of their worth or think of how much they can obtain things for based on what somebody's willing to pay them an hour. So we value things like being able to find medicines in the woods, singing lessons, haircuts. So we get creative with how we share what we grow here on the property. But as far as what our goals are, we want to keep in having more infrastructure here and have more people come to the property so that they can get their hands in the dirt and they can understand how this works, so they can go home with some seeds. They can understand how to cook our foods. We do have a lot of outdoor cooking classes here. So we would just like to keep up that and again, continue to plant more trees, plant more fruit trees and nut trees and more berries around. We just want to keep doing what we're doing.
I love it. And I'm just kind of curious, since you said that you guys also have cooking classes. I am a huge cook. I love to cook. I've made several cookbooks. What is your favorite traditional meal?
My favorite traditional meal is actually green corn soup. So that's the corn that we have before it's ripe. So we treat it much like sweet corn. We'll take it, we'll harvest it, and then we'll grill it out on the grill, cut the corn off, and then it's kind of like a chicken soup, but with our corn. And also then we take the dried corn, nixtamalize it, and then grind up the corn into flour and then make small dumplings. in that. So that's my favorite. But the favorite class to have here is we have a Ganastohal class, and that's our traditional cornbread, but we make it a little bit different than a lot of people are familiar with. It's kind of like a tamale. We'll make the loaf and then we'll wrap it in corn leaves, depending on the time of year. If we actually have our leaves of our corn is big enough, we'll take those fresh leaves, but otherwise we can use the dried ones. We cheat a bit, we wrap it in tin foil just to extra protect it. We'll have a good fire going outside. We'll set the Ganastohals in the foil, and then we'll cover them with coals, and then we'll let them sit for a bit, and then people can open them up and eat them. So that's one of my favorites to do as a group.
Oh, that sounds delicious. Now that we're in the spring right now, at least spring here, I think you guys had kind of a late winter in comparison to what normally happens. But
Yeah,
are you guys in like full swing of planting, or what's it
yeah.
look like right now?
We are in the full swing of planting, mostly trying to get our trees in. We're not doing too many seeds outside yet. That's probably about a week out. But again, we have two high tunnels and we need to plant in those to get that all situated. But yeah,
That's
it's a
awesome.
busy time.
I bet. Is it generally just you and your husband, or do you guys have like a whole team helping?
It's mostly just my husband and I. This year, we received a grant where we're going to be able to pay an intern to help our farm and another farm. And we also just put it out on social media when we need volunteers and people show up. It's pretty amazing.
That is awesome. What are you most proud of when it comes to your culture?
That we're still here and that we are doing the best that we can to pick these pieces up, and we're providing a resource to share that information so it's not so hard for other people to find it.
Are there any particular traditions that you guys do on a yearly basis that might be new to people like me listening, being like, oh man, I wish that I want to adopt that part of the culture. That's so cool.
I think the one of my favorite times is the harvest. So especially with our co-op when we have large volumes of corn that we harvest the entire month of October. So lots of community members come in and we pick in the morning and then we sit around for the rest of the day just husking the corn and getting the corn ready to be braided and hung up to dry for a few months in the winter.
What's is there any part of your society or living on the reservation that is so much different than normal American society that we should take with us? Like, I'm just thinking in my head, generational care, right? Like taking care of our elders. I don't know. I just feel like that would be very important.
Yeah, it definitely is very important. We're actually right now, I'm looking out the window and I'm seeing concrete trucks because we're building a duplex. So my parents are going to be on one side and my brother-in-law is going to be on the other side. We also have a detached garage where our certified commercial kitchen and the trading post is. And we have two apartments on top of that, and that's where our daughters live. So this whole property is going to have, three generations. And if they still are here, when they have children, there'd be five generations here. So I think it's really important that we take care of each other and we're mindful that it's not just about us, and it's this is bigger than who we are, and that we need to make sure that people around us are taken care of.
And your daughters now being older, you said they were 18 and 19. Are they embracing the lifestyle of planting and
Sort
living on the ground? Or are they like, can we go back to when you were an attorney?
No, they like it. They don't like weeding the garden, but they'll help with planting occasionally, and they'll definitely help with harvest. But it's interesting when I overhear them talk to other people, like they are listening, they are getting it. Actually, my youngest daughter is taking classes at a university nearby, and they were doing it's a College of Menominee Nation, and they were doing an Indigenous food sovereignty section. And she sent me a text message. She says, Mom, we're talking about Indigenous food sovereignty today. And then I said, oh, that's so awesome. And then she says, little do they know I'm an expert.
She could probably teach the class.
Yeah, I thought that was funny.
That's awesome. That's absolutely incredible. Well, I know that we are coming up on time, but I would love for you to tell everybody where can they learn more about you? And if I know that you guys do take donations, how can they help? And like you said, you are offering courses and classes and special events. Please tell me everything.
Yeah, so we're called Unguaqua. That's UKWAKHWA. We have a website that admittedly isn't the best maintained. We're actually just applied for a grant to have somebody maintain that website. But on that website, there's a link to donate. There's also a link to our fee schedule. And that's where you can contact us to have classes here. Like if you got a group of 20 folks that want to come by and you want to have a cooking class, you want to have a meal, you want to have a tour, all of that stuff, we're up for it. We welcome visitors from all over the place for that. We also have a YouTube channel, and that's where we have lots of videos about how we plant and care for our seeds, our foods. There's even stuff in there about Indigenous bartering etiquette. So there's meals on there. We show how to cook some of our foods. Also, we are active on Facebook and Instagram, and we're testing out TikTok right now. So you can see us all over the place.
When you figure out TikTok, let me know. I feel like there's TikTok people and there's Instagram people, and it is very hard to figure one out if you understand the other.
Yes, yes, it is.
Well, congratulations and best of luck to everything that you do. I know if I were closer, I would absolutely be there to give cooking lessons and to use that space because it sounds absolutely incredible. But I also look forward to just learning more from the YouTube channel. I'm actually going to get off with you and I want to go check on the planting system. I want to see these beautiful corn stalks with the beans crawling up them. I just think that sounds gorgeous.
Yes, thank you. It is.
All right. Thank you so much, Becky.
All right, thanks. Have a great day.
All right, you guys, what'd you think? Becky's pretty cool, right? Make sure to go share some love. I'll make sure to put all of her links to her website, to her socials down below so that you can go find more information. And then remember, if you're interested in making this not a hot girl summer because you're already hot, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but we can make this the strong girl summer, go sign up for the Summer Shred. It starts on June 3rd, so it is right around the corner. Let's go ahead and get you all set up. But if you have questions, email me. We can even have a phone chit chat to decide if it's right for you. And join me in a very small select group of women who are going to take this challenge on and conquer it. So go find out all the information down in the show notes. Hopefully I'll see you there. And if not, make sure you can still support the channel by giving this video a like or podcast, subscribing, leave a review, and I will be back in just a couple days. All right, bye guys.